Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Iseman from Passport to Pleasure. I'm a relationship coach, writer, non-monogamy nerd, all that juicy stuff. And this is my monthly Instagram live called Open Dialogue. We're going to be talking today to Trevor Kuhn, who is Love Daddy Trev. He is a love and relationship coach committed to helping gay and bi men build really authentic, thriving connections through empathy, curiosity, and open communication. So he'll be joining us in just a moment. We're going to talk about all different kinds of romantic connection, relationship dynamics, all of that. And I just want to thank you all so much for being here. For those of you that are familiar, I am based in Los Angeles. I don't want to pretend, the flaming elephant in the room is not here. I am currently displaced. I am safe. There will be a lot of transition for me in the coming days, but I am so grateful to be here with you today, have a little slice of normalcy and talk about my favorite subjects. So without further ado, we are going to welcome this week's guest. Oh, assuming that the technology gods are on our side. There we go. Okay. Thought I hit accept. Hi, Trevor. Good to see you. Thank you
See
so much
you.
for joining me today. I really, like I said, I really, really appreciate you just like sharing space and allowing me to be normal for an hour in my day today, just
Right.
for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining. People will be rolling in, but let's dive in. I'd love for you. I did a little mini intro, but I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself more thoroughly if you would like as well.
Okay. Yeah, I popped out of the room on accident and I missed your
Oh,
intro of me. So if I repeat anything you said, then all the better, right?
no worries.
Um, so yeah, I'm Trev or Trevor. I go by both. People always ask. My name is Trevor, but I use Trev all the time. So I'm a relationship and dating coach and also confidence coach for gay men. I used to be in the health and wellness space, and it was like sort of just it was my journey that I started as a life coach focused on wellness, and then I eventually was working with gay men on wellness, which is directly impacted by your relationships. And
100%.
yeah, so it just sort of happened organically, just like relationships do. And and yeah, so that's my focus now is single gay and bi men primarily. I do have clients who are in relationships, but I don't do couples
Mm-hmm.
coaching counseling.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually one person that wants to work on their own issues because we all have them, even if we're in a relationship. It's sometimes we need something outside of therapy that to really like dive in on our patterns and whatnot. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm really focused on just bringing self awareness, and I keep that term open relating keeps coming up
Yeah.
because we've been talking about it, but like
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
communication, throughout the process,
Yeah.
so that everyone's on the same
And
page. You know.
that's really all it is, right? Open dynamics. I think there's been a lot of like attachment to, and meaning added to what that means, especially as more people are talking more openly about open
Mhm.
relationships and open relating. But that's really the crux of it is
Yeah.
is how can we authentically engage and construct really our relationships. And I love what you said too. And I'll also reintroduce myself as well now that you've joined. I'm Iseman, founder of Passport to Pleasure, which is an online resource for couples and individuals looking to explore consensual or ethical non-monogamy. I've been practicing ethical non-monogamy personally, studying it, immersing myself, and also have been coaching primarily couples on this for almost a decade at this point. And yeah, to your point, working with individuals, working with duos or couples, there are differences very much. And so like when you're looking for that support in whatever component of relationship or relating, making sure that you're working with the right person in the right context to help support whether it's the relationship itself, an individual, I think is really key. And I love what you said too, your transition from wellness to like relationship wellness, which is really how I see it, because our relationships are the root of everything in our lives, and how you relate is how you relate. So
Yeah.
really dialing that in is deep work that's very much related to me
And
for
people
overall
people
wellness.
will often think of like a relationship as
Mm-hmm.
some like separate piece of their life,
Mm-hmm.
even though they
Exactly.
have all these other relationships going
Yeah.
on. Like, oh, but this relationship is like,
Yeah.
this is like a relationship. Other stuff's just like friends
Mm-hmm.
and and like coworkers, and also my gym. Like that, you have a
Yeah.
relationship with your gym whether you know it or
Oh,
not.
that's deep.
And like that it's just like
That's community.
your gym's always there. Are you showing up? But it's
Yeah,
really showing up for yourself.
exactly.
So yeah, it's like, how are you walking about your life, and what kind of
Hmm.
communication are you having, not only with the people in it, but with yourself? Like, how authentic are you being, like
Yeah,
with actions and your thoughts,
yeah,
and what like your needs, basically. Are you able to
yeah,
express your needs? Are you able to really clarify what they are for yourself?
yeah.
I'm sure we're going to
I think
talk
it,
about
oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think it's like you touched on like kind of a couple layers. I think that, shame, honestly, and maybe denial comes into play where it's like if you are hiding in your relationship with yourself, you are most definitely hiding in your relationship with your most intimate partner or partners.
Yeah.
And how can you have an open relationship? And I don't just necessarily mean multi-partner dynamics, because you can have an open monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
If you're hiding from your partner, if you're hiding from your partners, that is showing up everywhere in your life. And you touched on something I always end up bringing up, and I always have thought is rather amusing, where you'll see people totally invest in like, yeah, I'm going to this course or this, professional coach, and really, learning how to communicate in the room and really own a meeting and like all this stuff. But then when it comes to our most important like core relationships, our home partnerships,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, you should just know.
Yeah.
You should just, you had parents, they probably did a great job
Yeah.
telling you how to be in relationship and communicate, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same stuff. It is a skill set. So any relationship
Yeah.
skills are applicable. So if you work on your core partnerships and you really understand how to build those
Hmm.
relationships in a real, sustainable, authentic way, again, that plays out everywhere.
Well, and to piggyback off of that, we so often, and like my clients and people, even people who talk about they want to know, like, oh yeah, what exactly do you do in coaching, and how might this help me? I don't know. Like, I just feel like I just have a couple questions. Like, sometimes I'll start a call and I'm like, I just have a couple questions. I feel like if I could figure this out, like, I'll be good. And
Yeah,
like, I'm always like, all right, let's just see what these questions are, because
yeah,
there's no way that you have all these issues in dating or in a relationship. And if I answer a couple questions for you that you couldn't get answered elsewhere, that it's going to
yeah.
solve everything.
Like, oh, you
I
just have to. You're wearing the wrong size shoe. You just change your shoe.
Yeah,
You'll be fine.
I had someone. Yeah, no, I'm not. Well, maybe I'll give examples if it comes up. But yeah, I'm just like, he think that, oh, I don't have to like get help with relationship skills. That's just it all just
Yeah,
happens, right? It all just falls into place.
just like
And
love.
yet
You fall into love and it just
it
works.
just works. And yet, is it working? you
No.
know, like, why are we having this conversation then? Everything's fine.
Yeah,
Everything's just gonna line up perfectly. No,
yeah,
let's actually do the work. Let's
yeah.
get in there and figure out what needs to be done, because this is a big part of your life.
Exactly. And you get coaching, and most people are comfortable with coaching in so many different areas, right? At the gym, like you said too,
Mhm.
that's a big one. It's not this, it somehow takes on a whole different meaning for some reason when it comes to love, dating, relationships, sex, things like that. But these are skill sets. These are skill sets. Why would you not do whatever you can to invest in that part of yourself and your life,
Mhm.
um, to support it, like support yourself in strengthening that skill set. I think that's what really drew me. We can talk about this for just like a half second, but what drew me to coaching, because initially I went back to school to pursue becoming a licensed therapist, and
Mhm.
I could have those conversations all day. I loved my courses, loved my professors, loved my fellow students. There just something wasn't the right fit, and now having really gone the coaching route, and I understanding that therapy is still super valuable. What I do works wonderfully in conjunction with a great licensed therapist, but it's therapy to me is really looking at our past and really understanding where those patterns come from, which is something, I'll touch on with
Yeah.
clients. But what the work that I do, and I'd love to, hear you speak to this briefly if you don't mind. What I love is working with my clients to implement change now in the present to craft the future that they want. That I'm so like goal oriented myself. Like I want to take action. Yeah, let's understand, but now what? And that's what I really love about coaching.
Yeah. I always, I would say the majority, if not all, I can think of one client that hasn't had therapy. I think they've all done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working with queer men, so it's if they're not in therapy, then most likely they're looking into it. Especially if they're into personal development and they're reaching out to me because they want to improve this part of their life. So I always ask from the get-go, like, are you in therapy? Have you been in therapy? What have been your main takeaways from therapy? Because it helps me know if it helps me understand what you know about yourself, and it helps me understand if you're coachable as well. And then I say, okay, now I know where you've kind of already done the digging, and we can dig there some, but we can also, like you said, we can build a bridge to like some action steps that you can implement right now.
Absolutely. I love that. And apologies, we had a little technical difficulty. Sorry,
okay.
I'm not in my normal location.
Yeah. Okay.
We're back. But yes, thank you for sharing that. I did hear you. Well, and you'll see me look over here. I'm a nerd. I have notes, so I'm going to reference those as we dive into this conversation. I have notes. I'm that girl. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we're really going to dive in and look at how making an informed decision about what kind of relationship dynamics you actually want to create, how that, impacts you, your life, your community at large when you decide not to necessarily go with the status quo. And that can mean a number of different things based on, you and my specialties. Yeah. So I'd love, if you don't mind, I always ask this of my guests, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your own relationship journey, discovering your relationship, all of your orientations, and designing your current relationship, how that kind of came about.
Yeah. It's always it's always different to talk about my own relationship because I'm always talking.
Of course, you don't have to deep dive on anything you're not interested.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I'm talking to clients, I may make reference to something in my relationship, but I'm not giving them the lay down because at the end of the day, I want them to create the relationship they want, and I don't want them to be, influenced by, seeing me in a healthy. I've been with my partner for 5 years, so for some people that's a long time. To some people, like it's not that long. It's another thing about like perspective. When we look at like relationship success, I have clients also who have been in relationships for 15 years and like they're still coming to me for coaching because at the end of the day they're in a new chapter of their life or they haven't dated in a long time and it was different 15 years ago and like so we can all learn from each other. And that I always think of it that way is like I'm learning from my clients as much as they're learning from me because I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach, and this is a collaboration. So, but I'm going to be a bit general here about my own relationship because like my partner and I we haven't labeled ourselves as one particular dynamic. We've definitely had conversations and that it's always an open communication and we've had, consensual experiences with other men, but it's not like I said, it's not like, oh, we're open or we're closed. It's like, what do we want to do?
Yeah.
What's
at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a conversation, right? Labels are a conversation starter, not the end of the sentence, is what I like to say. Like, so you're doing exactly.
There's nothing wrong with someone saying that they're open or they're closed
and changing their mind.
If that's authentic for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's, I'll frame it that way. Whereas like in the past, and this might come up again, but in the past, I definitely have been very closed off to even having the conversation about desires outside of, a two-person relationship. But like I've definitely, I'll say like I've grown into, a person who can approach uncomfortable conversations.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And said that you ended that so perfectly, because that at the end of the day, that's what I tell people. It's like, if you take nothing else from learning about consensual non-monogamy, from working with a coach like myself, if you take nothing else, if you've expanded your capacity to hold discomfort, you're winning. Because we
Yeah,
have an entire society, a whole social system across the globe built on avoiding discomfort. But that's the only way to grow. Like, that is just growth. Unsafe is different. Uncomfortable versus unsafe. We treat
totally.
them the same. They're not.
Yeah. And I wonder actually if you could elaborate on how to approach, and if you want to table this till later, that's fine, but how to approach the
Yeah.
conversation of, for a couple
Mm-hmm.
who wants to, explore
Yeah.
non-monogamy. And maybe
Yeah.
the approach from someone who's fully comfortable with that conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and what might the approach be from the other side if someone who's never really been comfortable discussing it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is it's certainly something that comes up a lot of, when individuals do approach me, a lot of times it is specifically around
Hmm.
this. So I created like a PDF as like here's a starter like conversation template, if you're not ready to actually like work through it. But the key to me, the biggest thing is to come from curiosity, not conviction.
Hmm.
So no matter, if you're super experienced in E&M and that somehow has never come up with this new monogamous partner that you've been in, that's something else to look at. But if you're curious about it, maybe you've been reading, you might know that you're interested, but that doesn't actually mean that you are definitely wanting to do this. So don't trick yourself into that. Right now, you want to learn more. Let yourself come from that with your partner, instead of, I want to do this, I want to do it with you, but like, let's check this out. It's like, hey, I've heard about this thing like consensual non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy. Have you heard anything about it? Kind of get curious about where they are, more than making it about you, to really invite that conversation as a mutual effort, and then kind of engauge how they're responding to that. If it's a really quick aversion, or like a hard, harsh reaction, there's something else to look at there. But if you're coming from curiosity rather than conviction, there's an invitation there. It's less threatening. It doesn't come across like, oh, if I don't do this thing, everything's on the line. It's just, hey, let's learn more. Because, sometimes I've worked with a few, this is not common, but I have worked with a
Yeah.
few couples who thought they did want to open up. And then the more they learned about it and the more they opened up really the communication in their relationship and their own authentic connection, they realized that actually wasn't something they were interested in right now. They just needed to open up their relationship, not to other people, but more to each other.
They needed to be more open with each other.
Exactly.
Right. And they
Yeah.
wish they weren't doing before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's a lot of hiding that, oh, I have this thing I've talked about. Society tells me it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to assume that my partner is going to feel that same way too. So I'm going to, hide it, and that'll be better. And it never ends up being better, because if it's an
Yeah.
authentic part of who you are, even if it's just a curiosity, because being curious and learning about something is not the same thing as jumping in there. Like, I use the metaphor swimming a lot. If you've never learned how to swim, whatever it is, and you realize, what, actually, I kind of like to go swimming. You don't just jump into the Pacific Ocean. Like, ideally, you look for a local,
Yeah.
pool where you can get lessons in a group environment, maybe then a one-on-one. And
Yeah.
you really build that skill set so you don't drown. And the same goes here. You don't just go to a play party or, invite a third person in because you've heard the term consensual non-monogamy and it sounds cool. Like, it's, and also too, just a footnote, it's all relationship skills, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're investigating, learning more about multi-partner dynamics, open relating, that benefits monogamous relationships as well, because it's all relationship skills. So there's not
Right.
like a downside as far as I'm concerned investigating it.
Yeah. So you're saying, you're talking about it with your partner and then
Mm-hmm.
ultimately deciding this is not for us, then, but now we can talk about things that are for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Now,
you build up that muscle of like, oh, we can be in an uncomfortable conversation together and we don't have to flip a lid.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we can hate. Are you open to trying this experience?
Yeah.
Okay, no. Is there something else you might want to explore? You
Yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
because like I maybe one partner is just again more comfortable with having, you know, experiences that are
Yeah,
uncomfortable, you know, for most people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
generally one partner in a duo or a dyad that is more has more of a relationship quality that's known as openness, which just means they have, more freedom and availability to new experiences. That's less stressful for them than maybe a partner who has less of that quality. And so
Yeah.
it's very common for one partner to be more interested in that, or more, yeah, like to your point, more comfortable being uncomfortable. And it doesn't have to be a full fuck yes from both partners. It doesn't, but it can't be a full fuck no from anyone. The
Okay.
more reluctant partner will set the pace.
Okay. So let's, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So if someone does want an open relationship, they're dating someone, it wasn't talked about at the beginning, and now they're like however long in, whether it's 6 months or 6 years, and they're like, hey, I really want to try this thing,
Mm-hmm.
or like I want to have a threesome with somebody, or have you ever wanted to go to a sex party, and that the partner is like, no, no, there's no way.
Mm-hmm.
Does the conversation stop? Is it?
I mean, if it's a hard line and the only goal for both of the people in the relationship is to stay together,
Mhm.
then potentially it is.
Okay.
Hard lines are rare. They
Yeah.
might sound like a hard line, but it's generally fear,
Yeah.
which is not actually a hard line.
Okay.
It's investigating that. So it's,
Yeah.
fear, I see it so often because it's just the unknown,
Hmm.
right? Like we're more familiar with conversations when it comes to, kids or moving for a job, or there's a lot of stuff that happens in, long-term relationships that wasn't necessarily discussed right up front because life happens. We
Yeah.
grow, we change, so does our relationship.
Hmm.
So building a relationship that has that flexibility and can grow with you is a relationship that can support each of your mutual growth as well.
Yeah. And does the the thought that, okay, there's this person that wants to be non-monogamous, the other person does not, but their goal is to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who's desires to be non-monogamous might think, okay, I'm not getting what I want here. I don't really need it. It's just was something I wanted to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Can they shut that? Can they shut that out, or is it considered that they have to like shut out that desire, or can they just kind of accept that it's not that important?
There's a lot of elements to kind of like unpack
I,
in that.
I know, I
I'll
know. I
try
don't
and
know.
like
I
pitch
didn't know
from a
quite
few.
how to ask it, but I was like,
Yeah.
I just
No, I
wonder
hear.
from their
I think I hear.
standpoint, can they be
Yeah.
like, there's other thing because we in the that's one thing in life we don't always get what we want,
Yeah.
and like no relationship is going to be perfect for 20, 30, 50 years.
Yeah.
Like it's just we have to decide like longevity and meeting in the middle, or like someone's going to have to scrap their desires at some point. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm.
I
Yeah.
want to touch on a few different things that I kind of heard in the
Yeah.
question. A big one is the difference between fantasy and
Oh,
desire. So fantasy is something that you can, you're watching on a, porn, you're thinking about in your head, maybe you're even role playing to some extent. It's something that turns you on. I would actually rewind from that last part, but it's something that turns you on internally to think about, watch, etc. It's
mm-hmm.
not necessarily something you want to enact in life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between sort of fantasy and desire. Desire is when a fantasy wants to be brought to life.
Okay.
So a lot of people may have a fantasy of ENM, but if you don't really actually understand what that is first, it's just a fantasy and doesn't need to be a desire yet. That's why I really, really stress the educational component, because if you don't even know why you're interested, then there's no room to move forward yet. Like, I think you said that person's not getting what they want. Oh, I'm not getting what I want from this relationship because my partner doesn't want to open up. Well, what is it that you are thinking that you want from opening up? What is that thing? Because that's the important thing, right?
Yeah, finding out the why. Why
Yeah,
is it that you want that? What's that going to
exactly.
bring to you? What do you think it'll bring to the relationship?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Exactly. And then it's the same question for the partner who might be more averse. Like, what is the, potential resistance to that, fear of that? Like, what's behind, what feels like a hard block for you? Let's look at that, because it's always what's under the reaction, right? that why is really what's driving both of them. And often it'll be a lot more similar than they realize. And it's finding kind of where that connection point is. And I don't want to say compromise, but just, yeah, that meeting point of like, okay, here are your actual needs and here are your actual needs. What are the structures that support both of those things? Another important point is, so relationship orientation is a word that's getting used more and more, and there's debate within the space of, you know, is non-monogamy or polyamory, is that an orientation that's like you're born polyamorous and that's the thing, or is it more fluid, or is it a lifestyle? My answer to that is yes. Like, for me, yeah, like for me, I identify with the concept of non-monogamous relating as my orientation, because how I relate and how I'm able to show up as a partner, and so many things shifted for me exponentially when I started understanding that and really investigating that, and it feels very much a lived part of my experience. I also choose to live a lifestyle that is, you know, sex positive lifestyle in the space, which is an additional thing. And I also recognize orientation as fluid, whether it's sexual or relationship. There are people who are ambiamorous, is, you know, a term, people who are just as comfortable in a monogamous dynamic as a non-monogamous dynamic. So again, all of this to me is juicy because all I want is to open up the conversation instead of it being like relationship is this one size fits all thing that rarely does, and to really encapsulate what are relationship dynamics, and so how can we build ones that actually support us. And the other thing too you brought up is longevity. It comes up a lot. That's as the only marker for relationship success. So that's why I asked, you know, assuming that couple's definition of success and their main goal is to stay together, because that's not necessarily what's going to be best for everyone in every case. And it also doesn't mean it's a failure. This idea that like, oh, a relationship ending is somehow like you've given up and that's terrible. And well, but if the relationship isn't serving either of you to be your most full, authentic, self-expressed version of yourselves, you're bickering, you're hiding things from each other, like that's success.
Yeah. I mean, this is the reason couples counseling, you know, couples therapy is such a big thing now, you know, because it's almost like I think, and I talk to my clients about this too, I say when you're in a relationship, you need to talk about what happens when we reach a breaking point. You know, do we give up? Do we see a therapist? You know, what, like, I mean, you have to make that decision with each other, but seeing the, sorry, I just need a little water.
No.
I think exploring couples counseling can give you the opportunity to either work things out and keep the relationship going, or you work things out and you part ways. Like, what's the word? Congenially, or
Yeah. I think it's
not every relationship will last. Obviously, well, we know that not every relationship lasts forever, but also not every breakup has to be so dramatic.
Yeah, agreed. I like terminology like de-escalation or transition. It's because that idea of like breakup, it's this like shattering thing. It's a transition. A relationship's an agreement. You're making an agreement. You've renegotiated the agreement. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, there's of course emotions, and absolutely leave space for all the feeling, 100%. But adding sort of like blame and unnecessary, unnecessary like blame and just all of that is I'm gonna get all Buddhist and whatnot, but like pain is inevitable in life. Suffering is optional. So like it can be a bittersweet experience to lose someone that you care about. But if you know that by making the choice to transition the relationship to a new structure is serving both of you, and you really do love yourself and you do love that person, isn't that wonderful? As again, bittersweet as that very much is. It's easier to feel angry. Angry feels more productive.
Angry does, it feels like about, you know, I'm an advocate of crying.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Cry happy tears, cry sad tears, cry angry tears. Just like let it out. Like this is the body's like way of release,
Yeah.
you know, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you're weak. It's there for a reason. Like, use it. It's a bodily function, and it feels so good.
Oh yeah.
You know.
It's right up there
So
with the big O for me. It's just like any
totally.
kind of full release.
Oh my
Like, ugh, yeah.
gosh. Um, so I'm sure you were going to ask me this, but in terms of views within like my community about monogamy, non-monogamy, and it does come up in my coaching. I mean, I primarily am working with men who are focused on finding a primary partner. So maybe they are predisposed to an open relationship, or they're not even thinking about that because they're just kind of focused on, hey, I want to find a guy,
Mm-hmm.
and like we'll figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I'm just like, I want to attract my person. So with that, it feels like a division between the people in the gay community who are open and those who are monogamous, and there's a lot of judgment from both sides. Like, if you're monogamous, then you're heteronormative, and there's some stuff you got to deal with, and you probably have a jealous partner, or you're something. It's a lot of judgment.
It's a lot of story attached to that.
A lot of story attached, and then there's the other side, which is like, oh well, if you guys are open, then you don't really. Why are you even in a relationship? Because you're sleeping on the side anyway. Why don't you just be single if you want to do all that? And so I'm not saying everyone fits that category, right? There's a spectrum, but I do see it. Like, you see it on social media posts, and like you hear about it, especially guys who have been single for a long time, and then they kind of have some resentment toward couples who are open, because you're like, well, dang, you're out here scooping up single guys to take home when I can't even, and then it's, and I'm, all right, y'all, there's enough to go around.
Yeah.
Is what I often say. It doesn't always feel like that, but
no,
those are kind of like the two factions that kind of feel like that seem to exist, that I've observed and that I've talked to people about. And there's definitely a lot of misconception there.
Oh yeah, massively, and it's by no means limited to any one community. This is absolutely shows up in hetero spaces and cis spaces as well. Like, just that dividing line, because again, like we talked about, anger feels more productive than actually looking at, why am I uncomfortable? Why does this threaten me? It has nothing to do with me.
Why do you
so I
think it is that some people can't fathom non-monogamy, and then some people can't fathom monogamy? Like, it's one or the other, and you gotta be in one camp, because otherwise your relationship isn't worthy, or doesn't actually count. Like, what do you
that's just bullying. Like, quite frankly, like, so you need to belittle other people's relationship structure in order to feel confident in yours? That's concerning to me. Perhaps you should speak to a couples coach, regardless of your dynamic. But it's kind of how I feel with any of that stuff, when it's nothing to do with you. No one is telling you have to be non-monogamous. If you don't want to be non-monogamous, great. Understand why that is first for yourself, and then look for people who are in alignment with that. But yeah, the sort of like pointing fingers, and this relationship structure is better than that relationship structure, and yada yada yada. Like, I just think it's a lot of, quite frankly, wasted breath. We need to be looking at, what are these relationship structures actually, about? Are you monogamous because you're choosing monogamy because you understand what that is, or because you've been told that's all there is, and that's all you see around you all the time, and you're trying to fit yourself into a box and beating yourself up because it's not working for you, but you must be the problem? Let's open up the conversation, learn about all relationship dynamics, so you can actually make a choice, so it's not compulsory. Because like, there's nothing there's nothing heteronormative to me about coupledom. It's more like mononormative. But even like, the relationship structure itself is not mononormative. Monogamy is a relationship structure that you can choose. Mononormativity is when, just like heteronormativity, when it's seen, monogamy is the one end all be all relationship structure. It's the only one that's valid. It's the only one that has protections in place. It's the only one that's seen as healthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's more what that is. But just because somebody's monogamous doesn't mean they're mononormative any more than just because someone's straight means they're homophobic. You know, it's just, it's, there's more to it than that.
Can you define mononormativity? Because I don't hear that.
Yeah, so I was saying like mononormativity is similar to heteronormativity. It's just the, you know, where heteronormativity is seeing, you know, a man and woman in a relationship as the right way and what have you. Mononormativity is seeing two people together is the right way. So any other relationship dynamic is invalid, unhealthy, etc. That's considered mononormativity.
Okay. So yeah, because it's monogamy isn't the default in straight relationships. I mean, it's the social society's default, but there is like also this idea that like you see joked about. It's like, oh, straight people have boring sex. I'm like, okay, they probably don't all have boring sex. Many of them probably do, but that's like, again, that's a problem with their internal communication in their relationship. And so, you know, we don't have to have that problem. We can choose to have open communication, and if that involves, you know, expanding our sex life, whether it's new experiences with each other, or like you mentioned, like play parties, or just playing with other couples or single people. There's options there, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, just because you're expanding your sex life in a monogamous relationship doesn't necessarily mean other people have to be involved, but it's about being informed about what gives you pleasure.
Exactly. Even like what you said, like, oh, so-and-so has boring sex. Well, if it's not you, you don't get to make that call, because what might be boring to you might be deliciously fulfilling for somebody else.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Like, again, you said you could be ambiamorous.
Yeah.
Right? You could be like, you can like really kinky sex, and you could like really vanilla sex.
Yeah.
I'm sure. If you know
let's get into semantics. Define kinky.
Well, everyone has a different idea what that is.
Yeah. Technically, it's anything other than missionary sex in bed. So, guess what?
Guess what? Everyone's kinky.
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone, but yeah, I think that's one thing that also comes up, is this idea that within the gay community, and not everyone, I don't make generalizations because not everyone fits you know, the same dynamic, but this idea that like, oh, we want to be as far from heteronormative as possible, but now we're calling it mononormative. Hey, listen up, whoever's watching, mononormative.
New words.
And let people choose what works for them. And
focus on what you're up to.
It doesn't have to mean that it's bad for the community.
Yeah.
You know, one way or another. Like there's definitely, just because someone's open doesn't mean that they don't have a healthy relationship. They might not have a healthy relationship, but that comes down to their agreements and their
honoring of them.
Honoring of those agreements.
Yeah.
And you know, trashing the system, so to speak, isn't necessarily going to be you know, doesn't make you right about an entire dynamic. We just learned a new word and I lost like 10. But,
you got to make room. That's
yeah. So I think just finding out, like going back to what you said in the beginning, it's just like really clarifying and designing a relationship structure, or a variety of relationship structures throughout your journey that work for you, so that you are fulfilled, that you and your partner, or partners, because we haven't even touched on multiple partners, but that you are fulfilled and that you're communicating.
Yeah, because like there's a lot of, to your point earlier, like a lot of misconceptions and a lot of things that kind of get merged, you know, ideas that get merged about what things are. And again, that's why I stress, you know, education so much. Non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy is not a synonym for casual dating. It's not the same thing. You can be casually dating non-monogamously. You
Yeah.
can be casually dating monogamously. You can be looking for, more long-term partnership and be primary minded and be non-monogamous. So that those are not synonyms. So and I think they get used that way a lot just across the board. So that can get a little confusing for people
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention this, kind of tying back to what we were talking about earlier. If maybe two partners aren't necessarily on the same page about what their relationship structure could be.
Okay.
Mono-poly relationships are possible, meaning that one partner is monogamous, one partner is polyamorous.
Hmm.
It comes with its own challenges, but it really shines a spotlight on how we get some really important stuff a little wrong in how we view relationships. So kind of the difference between boundaries and controlling behavior. So I get to decide what kind of partners I want to be with,
Okay.
what kind of relationship. I don't get to tell other people what to do. So in the same way that, I'm non-monogamous, if I'm, engaging with somebody who knows I'm not monogamous, but they're monogamous, I don't get to tell them you have to go be with other people any more than they get to tell me you can't. We just get to decide if we want to be together, if we want to be in a
Right.
relationship.
So if someone is like happy to let you do that, I don't want to participate.
Yeah. And
is that
we negotiate what those boundaries are. Do they want to know anything? How much? If so, when and how? Are there, obviously, there are certain things that impact each other. We're going to discuss, safer sex practices, things like that, shared space, if that's a consideration. All of that needs to be negotiated and met with common ground. But if that person is not comfortable with, me being non-monogamous, they're probably not a great candidate for me as a partner.
This might be a good time to talk about jealousy.
Yeah.
I think that's
poly people don't feel jealousy. Poly people don't feel jealousy. We don't have
that. Wait, never?
That's a lie. It's a fallacy, a huge fallacy.
Okay. So I was gonna say I think that jealousy is gonna come up in any relationship for a number of reasons. But one of the things is I see often said is like, oh, I don't knock on open relationships, but I couldn't do it because I get jealous.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't let my man such and such. Like I couldn't handle that. I would get jealous. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say to someone that has that mindset?
Why do you think you need to avoid feeling jealous?
Why do you think you need to avoid feeling jealous? Okay.
What does it mean to you to feel jealous? What is the story behind that? If you are experiencing jealousy, that means what?
Okay. Yeah.
That would be my investigation.
If you're experiencing jealousy, that would mean what for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in general, when someone tells me that they're having jealous feelings when it comes to someone that they're dating, I say, have you discussed it with them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I couldn't, because then they'll think I'm crazy. I'm like, okay, well, jealousy is a normal feeling. There's nothing abnormal about it. It just it's telling you something, like you
exactly.
Like, what is it telling you, and what do you need to communicate in order to feel safe and resolve that jealous feeling?
Yeah, that's all jealousy is. Exactly. It's just telling you information. If you understand kind of what kind of jealousy are you dealing with, that helps you kind of see like, oh, what is it pointing towards? And it's uncomfortable. Like, it is not a pleasant experience. There's something called compersion is a word you'll hear in the poly non-monogamous community. It's known as the opposite of jealousy, is how it's sometimes referred to, and it just means the joy and pleasure that you can feel from watching or hearing about your partner experience joy or pleasure with someone else. And we get that for our friends when they get a promotion, our partner when they get a promotion, anything else. And so that can be extrapolated upon into all areas of relationship. And it isn't, it's not like if you feel jealousy and not compersion, there's something wrong with you, or vice versa or anything. Compersion comes more easily for some people than others. It is a skill you can develop, just like jealousy is really just a personal development tool that you can learn to work with. And that's really, I think, the only difference is, people that are learning about and practicing consensual non-monogamy, is that jealousy isn't seen as something to avoid. It's just seen as a, you know, information tool, and like, what do we need to look at here? Is this something just for me to look at and work on, or is this something for me to bring to my partner because it's something in the relationship we both need to look at? It's a powerful tool. It's an uncomfortable little bitch, but it's a powerful tool.
Yeah. Share it. Share everything.
It's a bid for connection when you do that, when you bring it to your partner.
I like that, a bid for connection.
Yeah.
I want to share something with you that I'm feeling.
Yeah. How vulnerable is that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're telling your partner, I trust you. I value our relationship, and I trust it as a safe space to bring this thing to you, because I know that you'll sit in this with me and we'll figure it out together. I see you as a person who will hold that space. I see you as someone who is capable of being uncomfortable with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Takes work. For sure. For sure. Constant, ongoing work.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if someone is dating someone, and whether it's in the beginning stages or a few years down the road, do you think that, like, is there a time frame? Like, how soon do you think that someone should bring up their desires for consensual non-monogamy or E&M? These are two different words, right? It's like slightly different.
Those are synonyms: consensual non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, CNM, ENM.
Okay, yeah. So how soon do you think they should bring it up? And I'll just say that I usually tell clients, if your goal is to have this primary partner, right? There's no rush in adding to it. I this whole idea of like pods and polycules, like I have no knowledge of that. So I focus on building a partnership. And so, but sometimes I will be coaching someone who says, I want to make sure that I'm with someone who's open to being open. So I guess that's really where my question is like, how soon should they bring that up? And is it like in the first like month? Is it like wait until you guys are building something together and then wait till that fantasy or desire comes up? Like, I'm just curious what you think.
Is this a person who's already practicing or has taken steps, is somehow living into this, or is this somebody who's just sort of like curious about it?
Person that doesn't want to give up their quote unquote freedom, but they want to be in a relationship, and they've never been in a situation where they've had to have this conversation with someone because they've been quote unquote free.
Yeah, so I really hope you feel free in any relationship dynamic you're in.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
Totally. So they're like, oh yeah, it's come up a few times. We're like, I don't know, like if I should like talk about it on the first date. And I'm like, well, I mean, it depends. I mean, it totally depends. It's always going to be circumstantial, and maybe you have some knowledge of that person's views.
Yeah.
But I'm like, do you go on a first date and say, hey, so I'm only into E&M. Are you cool with that? No? Okay. Let's be friends. Like, I mean, just like, where do you think that starts? And maybe in the work that you've done in the couples that and relationships you've coached on, where does that fit in?
My advice is similar to something we talked about a little earlier. Is that curiosity over conviction. Unless you're like I am non-monogamous. I talk about it.
Yeah.
Like if we've met on an app, you know, if we've met in person, you probably, I'm about as out as you can be at this point in my life. But I would still say, honestly, if you know this about yourself, this is something you are going to pursue or have already started pursuing, honestly, for any reason, date one, like right on the table, because there's no need to, I wouldn't want somebody to date me with the intention of turning me monogamous or, you know, to anything like that any more than I would want, you know what I'm saying? So like, if you know this is something you're into, and again, I wouldn't say, this is me, this is what I do, you're cool, right? It's like, hey, so have you heard the term, do you know CNM, ENM, have you heard those things? What do you think about that? Are you familiar with that? So like, I've actually been exploring, and this has been as a sharing instead of this like empath, like, who are you? Like, it's just like, what's your experience with it? I'd love to, isn't that what dating is? We're getting
Yeah,
to know each other. We're sharing ourselves.
yeah,
No one's trying to win anything. It's like, I don't even know if I want to continue seeing you. Like, we're here to see if we want to see each other again. So let's
yeah. And
share as much information
I
as we can.
think people are worried about, well, yeah, like saying the wrong thing or sharing the wrong thing. It's like, well, you really can't.
Yeah, if it's authentic.
One of my pieces of advice that I've shared on social media and I've shared with clients is you can never say the wrong thing to the right person. And if this is
Yeah,
if this person it, if this is your people, let's
exactly.
just say like this is your people. It doesn't mean it's they're your person,
Yeah,
but they're going to be open to whatever conversation you want to have. And if it
exactly.
rubs them the wrong way, then they're not there's not alignment there, and you
Yeah,
can't force
it's that
it.
simple.
Yeah.
Exactly. No one's failed. No one has,
Hmm.
this is not a rejection. This is information. And now we're making a decision.
Yeah.
That's all.
And like not every date is going to become a relationship if we
Yeah.
haven't learned that already.
Even if you're non-monogamous, it doesn't
We're not
mean.
monogamous. Uh,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
absolutely. That curiosity, I think, is really such a key quality to nurture in yourself. Because it just, there's so much value in it in so many areas of your life. At least I have found that to be the case,
Mhm.
both personally and, working with clients. It just removes the sort of combative energy. And
Mhm.
honestly, I've seen it really be and experienced it be the antidote to fear. When there's that curiosity, you're also activating a different part of your brain. So there's that openness quality we talked about
Yeah.
earlier, gets a little more of an invitation.
Yeah. I also have had that conversation with a number of clients who say, "Oh, I just want," because going back to what's expected
Mm.
or fought over in the gay community, it's like, oh, there's this idea that everyone's open, and
Yeah, yeah,
whether that's good or bad is depends on the person, uh, taking that in. But it's not true. It's a myth.
hmm
Um, but I think a lot of guys have trouble specifically with dating apps because it's like,
yeah,
well, everyone there seems to they're either running into guys who are in relationships on dating apps, or they're running into guys who just want to fuck around, and it's like no one's serious. So that word
yeah.
serious
Oh,
comes up.
that comes up a
So
lot. Oh, you're not committed.
yeah, like
You can't be.
so yeah, I'm just like, well, okay, let's serious is kind of a broad uh, non-specific term, right?
Hmm.
Can someone be serious and um, have a different idea of how a relationship should go? They just because someone is on an app still too, right? Like oh well, it comes up to like, oh, I was going on some dates and like I went on, he was still on the app, and I'm like, what's he looking for? And it's like, well, you don't know that yet. You're still discovering that.
Hmm.
So like, let's not worry about who's on what app. At the end of the day, you got to get people. You're communicating with the person who's in front of you,
Yeah,
and let's hope that they're being authentic.
yeah.
And what was the question I asked a second ago? Um, oh yeah, just this idea that, oh, I was gonna say like a client who's monogamous. I'll say, okay, you want to find someone else who's monogamous because that's comfortable for you.
Mhm.
Also, you might find someone who's monogamous or claims to be, and at some point things might change. So whether it's a relationship dynamic or someone wants to move to another city that you've never even considered wanting to live in and that's uncomfortable for you, like you're going to approach points of discomfort in your relationship, things that you didn't expect or plan for, or maybe you even dreaded, and you
Yeah,
thought you could avoid it
yeah,
by getting into this relationship, and then you can still have your life plan go 100% according to the way that you wished it would. But once you're in a relationship, you suddenly have to forget about the the life plan, because now it's a shared life plan, a shared life vision.
Yeah. Well,
That
even if you're not in a relationship, what is it? The only constant is change.
oh
Like if you're not
yeah,
adaptable, like relationship or not, if you can't handle change and shifting of things going unexpected, like
yeah.
good luck.
I mean,
That's you.
let's not talk about fires going on right now. Like
Yeah, as I
no
sit
one thought
here.
that was going to happen, and it
Yeah.
sucks.
Yep.
And it it's it puts more than a wrench in people's lives. But
The whole
yeah,
ass toolbox. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, we can't control everything,
No.
and that's the big one. It's like, what are you trying to control? And whatever you're trying to control could be the very reason why you're stuck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's a big one. I mean, myself, this is my work personally as well, that releasing, right? Like you don't have to control everything, but also like, thank God.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, okay, great. I can just learn
Yeah.
to surf a little bit better, maybe. Yeah, I want also really quick because I only have a few minutes left. I saw we had a question pop in. What would you
Okay.
say to someone who is concerned about family members? And feel free to drop questions too. Like, even if we don't get to them right now on the live, drop questions. I will review everything. Absolutely. I'm here to answer any questions you might have if you're watching the replay as well.
Okay.
But Caleb asks, what would you say to someone who is concerned about family members who may learn of your consensual non-monogamous relationships? Yeah, I think I'm really glad that you asked that. That's a beautiful point to bring this conversation home, because there's some very real world concerns to be aware of when you're entering into any type of, I hate the term, but alternative life, relationship design, whatever. There are actually no legal protections right now for multi-partner dynamics. So you can lose your job, you can lose your home, you can lose custody, healthcare, all of it. Except for a few little oases that are popping up around America, at least. And that, I'm more versed in the US
In
specifically.
Mexico, where?
Where'd you say?
Like in Mexico, where are you talking about?
Like actually Berkeley, two places in California
Oh,
just passed. These are like city ordinances though, so it's still
yeah,
not like
yeah,
this is like early stages of progression.
yeah.
But just
Right.
it is something to really, really be aware of. So do choose who you come out to, how, when.
Yeah.
If you not knowing kind of much about your particular parents, like if there's a reason you don't want them to know what that is, like look at that reason. Is it something you're just uncomfortable, afraid, what have you, or you're afraid of being that vulnerable, or if they've actively been aggressive and verbally violent or anything about hearing things like that, then like you have every right to not be out to anyone that you don't want to be that open to. And it's actually something too, it's really important to acknowledge. um, if you are partnered with someone who is not as open in their life as you are, you don't get to open them up. You are making an agreement to enter into their space. So I'll give a real world example. So if you're going to their office holiday party and they're not out at work, you do not get to out them. If you are their plus one date and you're his only boyfriend at work, as far as his colleagues know, that is what you're agreeing to. If you are uncomfortable showing up that way, you should not be his plus one to his office party. We don't get to bring our ego and our desires and things like that into our partners' lives in that way. They get to dictate kind of that level, because there's, like I said, there's real world considerations to look at in that regard.
Yeah. I didn't even occur to me because that even comes up with one-on-one partnerships in the gay community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because people are coming out at all different stages,
Yeah.
and different levels of, let's call it toleration, but it's really acceptance. Tolerance, not toleration. Gosh, give me a new word to learn, because
words are hard. Symbiosexual. That's a new one that just got created recently. That's a new word.
Okay.
The attraction to an already established couple or dyad.
Wait, attraction
to an already established relationship. So somebody who likes to date couples, not an individual in the couple, but the actual couple themselves.
That's what that means?
Yeah, I just, it's a new I think new term in general. It's
Okay.
definitely new to me. I just learned that recently last year.
Yeah.
And it was great because I had that experience earlier in my sort of non-monogamy journey. So I was really like, I had partners who were couples. It wasn't I was dating one of them or I was dating the relationship.
Okay.
And
But
now I have a word.
now
So
you're what? You have
now
a
I have a
word.
word for
Is it is it
homosexuality.
is it the same if someone is like, oh, I love to sleep with couples? That's different. That's not like,
I mean, I, I don't get to, you can be unicorn is a term you'll hear, third person coming into a dynamic.
mm.
Um, it could, sure.
Well, because it's like, well, is this is like you like as a sapiosexual person, you're attracted to couples who are like open.
Mhm.
Okay. Like you actually have a chance of being with them romantically. Okay.
At this point in my journey, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
much more interested in connection. There's been periods, and I just want to be mindful of the time.
Yeah.
We're a
No.
few minutes over. I don't want to take over, but happy to kind of finish these thoughts. Um, I have certainly had periods in my journey that were more, sexually motivated maybe than romantically motivated, because those are two different desire,
Yeah.
planes of desire. There's romantic and emotional need, there's sexual, physical need. At this point in my journey, I'm so much more interested in just like real, like connective, ongoing relationship of any degree. Like I don't have like a primary relationship or a primary partner, but I have a few very meaningful, ongoing, long-term relationships that
Mm.
are very real and very, very invested for me. And it's you know been a wonderful thing to learn how to not judge myself at varying stages of development.
Yeah.
Like even with my sexuality, my sexual orientation versus my relationship orientation, and had certain judgments about myself because how I was with women versus men and why, and just really understanding again those different planes of desire, sexual and emotional, and understanding how those can show up a little differently, and then also that it is a journey, not to be like super woo woo cliche, but like it's a fucking journey. Like the destination is death, y'all. Like have a
Yeah.
good time.
Have a good time. Yeah, I like that. Have a good time and
Be
don't
good to each other.
don't don't let people shame you for your desires.
Yeah.
And as long as right, no one's getting hurt.
Yeah. As long as everything's consensual
Yeah.
and informed, and you're coming from a place of curiosity, not like coercion, things like that,
Yeah.
so much is possible. Like assume the best of people, and make sure that you're showing up as the best version of yourself too. And then there's just so
Yeah.
much room.
And if something, I'll just say one last thing is like if something, like lean into the discomfort
Yeah.
and express it. Don't like hold it like it's actually toxic when you hold in
Yeah.
negative feelings and harbor resentment
Yeah.
and worry and just open that shit
Yeah.
up. You
Yeah. And it is scary, and
know?
that's okay. It's okay. The discomfort, again, defining the difference between unsafe and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Uncomfortable is your friend. That's your friend for personal growth. Jealousy will get you there real quick. But it is a wonderful thing to be able to hold that discomfort. You are strengthening an incredibly important skill set when you do that. And use your relationship again consensually. Use your partnerships to develop that. You're both growing from that.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you
this was
so much.
great. I'm glad you asked
Yeah.
me to do this.
I'm
This is
glad you
my
said yes.
first. This is literally my first. Actually, I did one of these during the pandemic. I remember now.
I,
It
in the
was
good old
yeah, what a time.
days.
It's the good old days where everyone was doing this stuff. But yeah, I haven't done this in a long time. I've done
No.
some podcasts. Um, but yeah, this was cool. So thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you, and let's wrap up by letting people know where they can find you and why they should.
That's great. I see a few of people I know in here. So, but if you're in here from Allie's page and you want to find me, just go to Love Daddy Trev. That is my handle. My website's lovedaddy.co. Through there, you can. I prefer if you do want to book like a chat with me, I prefer you do that from my website. I get bombarded with DMs, and I sometimes just don't check them because I've got email and I've got WhatsApp and I've got my iMessage, and I'm just like too many places to look for messages.
Yeah.
So if I'm not opening your Instagram DM, you can reach me through my website. But yeah, just follow me at Love Daddy Trev, and yeah, for anyone that is from my end that's looking here at Ali, go ahead and tell them real quick.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, very similarly, you can find me, of course, here at Passport to Pleasure, Passport, the number 2 Pleasure. That's also my website, passporttopleasure.com. That's me on Substack, TikTok, all the things. And very similar to you, so many ways of reaching out and connecting. It's hard to keep track. So the best way is to go to my website, passport, the number 2 pleasure.com, passport2pleasure.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter there. You automatically get free access to book a consultation with me to see if working together is the right path. But I also have a ton of online resources available there as well. Bunch of different, tools like the jealousy toolkit I put together, because jealousy does come up a lot with people. So I pulled all of my tools together into one toolkit to give everyone the resources they need. But I have a ton of stuff there. My course, ENM 101, if you're looking to explore this, know what it is that you're exploring. It'll help you determine your IRS, your ideal relationship structure. And it'll also help you create what's called your relationship agreement, which is a literal document that you work on with your partner as the sort of, boundary lines, if you will, of the relationship as you're negotiating that dynamic. So yeah, please reach out to me on my website. I would love to hear from you. I'm here as a resource. And just thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you, Chad, for being so wonderful and adding your value.
Thank you. And go get some fresh air. I hear you're fleeing Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, I have to, unfortunately. Respiratory issues from COVID. I'm just going across the ocean. I'm like, I need to get as far.
Get out. Get far away.
To Europe. Yeah.
All right.
So I'll keep y'all updated. Stay tuned. But thank you for now. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Bye. Thanks.